Hello and thank you for watching. This is STSC back again with LEGO Transformers Predaking. Now that I've covered all 5 individual members, it's finally time to combine Predaking. But before I do, I want to take a second to look at the Predacons all together as a team. Altogether, I think they're a pretty cohesive unit, and across the team I try to keep a similar level of complexity and style, though of course Razorclaw is a bit of an outlier, though that's to be expected from the torso bot. On all the limb bots, I use the same basic thigh and foot design, which helps to unify the team a little, and was also just practical for how they transformed into combined mode. While obviously Predaking is the main event, I still have a lot of fun with these 5 together even without combining them. And because they're LEGO, of course, there is a level of modularity, and there are many ways to combine them without turning them into Predaking. For example, I stumbled upon a Razorclaw Big Hands mode, which I knew I just had to include in the video. But without further ado, it's finally time to form Predaking. The legs are transformed and ready to combine. Rampage is transformed and ready to combine. Dive Bomb is transformed and ready to combine. Razorclaw is transformed and ready to combine. And here we have Predaking finally combined. When I started this project, I had one main mission statement. I wanted the combined form to feel like a cohesive and fun-to-handle action figure. Combiners far too often end up looking slapped together or poorly proportioned. A lot of the times they're covered in kibble from the other modes of their components. So it was my goal to try and avoid those problems. I didn't want animal legs hanging off the limb modes, I didn't want stumpy legs, and I wanted proper elbows. And in the end, I think I achieved all those things. I talked a lot about the sacrifices I had to make on each individual component to make this combined mode work, and I think in the end they really pay off, and I couldn't be happier. Turning him around, you can see he has a pretty clean combination. The only kibble is Razorclaw's fists, which stick out the back. And while they are kibble, they're pretty tiny relative to the whole combiner, so I don't mind them very much. I want to take a moment to focus on each individual component, starting with the legs, which I'm particularly proud of. I think they just look super clean in this mode, and the way they peg together is very satisfying. Of course, it can be a little bit loose depending on the quality of the stud's clutch, but it does work in my experience, and I don't know, I really love how this looks. And of course, Headstrong turns into a pretty much identical leg, just in different colors and obviously with the rhino head on the knee. I just want to take this second to address how the foot connects. You can see it's just by 4 simple studs. A nice, simple, and effective connection. Next up we have Rampage, and just like the legs, I'm really proud of how solidly and cleanly the forearm transforms. It just all pegs together very neatly into one block, and it looks like a robot's forearm. It doesn't look like 2 legs pegged together. It looks like an arm. And I don't know, that's just very satisfying to me. The one thing I don't find as satisfying is the way that his arms actually form kind of a shoulder pad. That is, not as cohesive. I don't think it looks bad per se, but I would have liked to have them kind of fold up more securely, whereas here they do kind of just get pushed up, and you just kind of have to hope they sit there. In this mode, his tail is mounted in just the right place to kind of be like an assassin hidden blade thing, but it's so tiny, I personally don't think it looks any good, so I don't really tend to use it. Moving on to Dive Bomb, his arm mode is generally the same as Rampage, which of course was by intention. There are some subtle differences, like the head is obviously a bird head, not a tiger head, and the forearm is a little bit bulkier with the tail feather and thrusters back there, but generally it's the same. I want to take a moment to address the combiner peg, which is just a basic mixel joint. That might seem a little weak and small for a combiner of this size, but in my experience, it's actually pretty good at supporting the weight of the arm. Of course, the clutch of mixel joints varies, so if you have a weak one, it might not be strong enough, but in my collection, I had plenty of strong ones, and I think that works just fine. Last but not least, we can focus on the torso, which I'm generally pretty proud of. I really like the way the waist armor transforms and folds down from his collar. I just think that's a really neat touch, and it helps to differentiate between the torso mode and Razorclaw's robot mode. The one thing I'm not happy about is that the head is an extra part and wasn't able to fold out from the torso. A little detail I want to call out is the way that Razorclaw's feet form skirt armor here on the thighs. I think it's a little bit ugly with the anti-studs, but generally I'm pretty happy with how it looks. For articulation, Predaking's head can look up and down as well as left and right. Then the guns on his shoulders are also on ball joints, so they can aim up and down a little bit and swivel left and right. The shoulder is a mixel joint, which generally gets a pretty good range, though it sometimes does, of course, knock into the gun here or the wing behind it, but just to showcase, it is generally pretty strong and is able to hold up the weight of the arm just fine. The elbow is another mixel joint which can bend about this far. It's not a full 90, but I think it's a decent range for a combiner. And of course, that ball joint can be used as a swivel and can bend in really any direction. Then there's a hinge at the wrist, a rotation, and each finger is individually posable, and the thumb can pose outwards like this. Unfortunately, due to the transformation of the armor here, the waist swivel is now locked, but the hips are on ball joints, which can get a pretty good range forward as well as backwards and in and out. The knees are on ratchets, which can bend this far. The ankle is a ball joint, which allows for pivot in both directions. For size comparison, here we have a minifigure. And here we have Cheetor. I didn't build any accessories for Predaking, but he can hold Razorclaw's blades, kind of like a Halo energy sword. Figuratively and literally, this is the mode where it all comes together. Every choice I made on each individual Predacon makes sense here and adds up to what I think is just a really cool combined form. While he's too heavy to put in a lot of more dynamic or crazy poses, it's still a lot of fun to just play around with his joints and pose him around. He kind of feels like a big action figure. And, well, that was my goal going into it, so I couldn't be happier. And now Predaking week is finally over. I hope you all enjoyed it, but that's all I've got for now. So, I'll see you next time.